What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a very busy Tuesday edition of BYP with Q. And I know we've got a substantial amount of stuff to get into. Rich Quinones is here. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us, our NFL Insider, SR 1029 FM. The game, 14 weeks in the books. We start to look ahead to week 15 in the NFL, but the news drops probably about three or so minutes ago. The hoodie is back, my friend. Bill Belichick is back to the coaching sidelines, but it's not in the NFL. Multiple sources, including ESPN, Bill Belichick finalizing a deal to be the next head coach of North Carolina, UNC, 72 years of age. We know about the track record with the Patriots and all those Super Bowls. His father was an assistant with UNC back in the day, but I mean, you're talking about one of the all-time greatest head coaches to ever stroll the sidelines, if you will. Six Super Bowl championships, NFL record, won two more as an NFL assistant, won a couple, as I alluded to, with the Giants, 333 wins. He's only 14 shy of Don Shula's mark of 347. Lloyd, bombshell news, right? Because not a lot of NFL teams were touching him in the offseason. I guess the first thing is, how shocked are you that Belichick, an all-time great Mount Rushmore, is going to take a gig with a college football squad?
Yeah, Q and I had heard rumblings that he was really interested in his job. He said if they offered it, he would take it. And, not surprisingly, he's going to give it a go. But the thing is, Q, you just wonder about control aspects and how he's going to be able to maintain that. Because that was a big thing around the NFL guys I talked to said he interviewed with a couple teams, particularly the Falcons last year, and he wanted total control in terms of personnel and everything. And now, in college, it's a lot different now, Q. You have the NIL situation, you have the transfer portal, and we're not seeing these iconic coaches kind of controlling everything. I know Mac Brown was an older coach and he left, but you're not seeing the Joe Pod types, Bobby Bowden's out there, guys have been there forever, and they're controlling the whole narrative, including the town. So, it's going to be interesting to see how he acclimates to the new athletes because kids today they want immediate gratification and playing time, etc., where they're leaving. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out.
I mean, listen, there's got to be stipulations in there at the end of the day that he's basically going to be a Paterno-esque, running the show. I mean, Paterno knew when you spit on the sidewalk. Now, again, God rest his soul, all the other Sandusky stuff aside, I mean, that's kind of the cloud that Belichick is now bringing. Obviously, Paterno was able to do it in the college ranks. Belichick has been able to do it in the pro ranks. I don't even know what the monies are going to be, but I guarantee there's going to be some stipulations there. Oh, by the way, my kid is going to be able to take over in a couple of years. I mean, I guess here's my question is this because he's such a football savant that he wants to still be around the game? You take a year off and you realize maybe no NFL teams are going to be banging down his door. Like, what's the pro to this as opposed to the cons? I mean, obviously, he can go winless in two seasons. It's not going to tarnish his legacy.
Yeah, I think for Belichick, he's always considered himself a teacher of the game, and this is going to give him his opportunity to do it in the college ranks and see if he can rebuild this program. But you definitely have to say it's a step down from where he was in the National Football League. And you look back at other coaches, like think of Herm Edwards. Herm Edwards came from the Jets and he was kind of out there for a little bit. And then he took a college job and he
Didn't work
saw how
out.
much work it took. It just did not work out. And we recently saw Eric Bieniemy just this week, the offensive coordinator for UCLA get fired and he was an NFL guy. So it's two different types it's two different sports basically too. College football is a lot different than a pro game, and Belichick's going to have to learn it quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, why was there such a lack of interest um, from some of these owners and GMs in the NFL where all these vacancies opened up? And obviously, as it turns out, he's better than the guys that have been fired and the teams that are going to be looking for head coaches. It just, I don't know. Do you think maybe he potentially wanted some too much power. I mean, look, you can cross him off the list for the Giants gig. You can cross him off the list for the Cowboys gig. I mean, obviously, you cross him off the list for all these potential vacancies. But why do you think there wasn't as much buzz and a courtship when it came to some of these NFL teams wanting to bring in Belichick?
Yeah, there's two things, Q, that I see with this. First off, it's definitely a situation. Belichick may say as much as you want. Oh, I'm not the GM. I'm okay. I can play with other people in the sandbox, etc. It's definitely a control thing, and a lot of these coaches also are looking at Belichick at his age and what he's accomplished. Is he complacent? Is he going to bring that fire every day to the office that maybe a young hotshot assistant, one of these McVay disciples could bring? So that's always a question. So I think right now the league is leaning towards these passing gurus, these offensive minds, and that's why Belichick kind of came in second place in a couple of openings last season.
It's still, when you really think about this, I mean, so Bill Walsh won Super Bowls, went back to college. Deion Sanders won Super Bowls as a player, now with Colorado, and now you have Belichick. I'm trying to figure out if this is, I don't know if they have the length. I mean, you got to imagine he's probably putting stipulations that his son's going to take over when he decides to retire, correct?
Yeah, I would think Steve Belichick would definitely be on the staff, and they'll kind of figure things out. But I really want to see how this goes. Remember Al Groh? Al Groh was another guy. He with the Jet thing with the University of Virginia, and it's just so difficult to go from one medium to the other. I saw it firsthand in Philadelphia. Chip Kelly coming from the college ranks to the pros with the Eagles. It just showed, all his tactics and learning and teaching stuff did not work in terms of NFL
Yeah.
players. So
I mean,
it's going to be interesting to see
Lou
the
Holtz
reverse. Yeah.
started. Yeah, Lou Holtz was an assistant for a couple years, then NC State, then 76 with the Jets. Then he bounced around Arkansas, Minnesota, and obviously went to Notre Dame, did fairly well um, in Notre Dame. But you're right. I mean, it's just I'm just I'm stunned, to be quite honest. Like, I really thought it was more of a leverage ploy, to be quite honest with you. Like, there were some grumblings, and I'll give credit where credit is due. The prop Professor Shine, he typically comes on during the season as well, sharp bettor and handicapper. His his thinking was use this as leverage because there's reports. Mike Lombardi's reporting that Todd Bowles is going to retire at the end of the season, no matter what, with Tampa Bay. And we know that the Glazer family has an affiliation. They have a soft spot for the likes of a Belichick, and that would have been maybe that perfect landing spot, if you will. But now, and I want to give credit where credit is due. I thought a lot of people thought he was kind of using this as a little bit of um, leverage, right? I mean, you know, I think what's going to happen is the Glazers will probably get rid of Todd Bowles, and you know he'll probably try to still find some work, right? I mean, so it's like a situation, if Tampa Bay was thinking about hiring Belichick, they would have fired Bowles, or they're going to fire Bowles no matter what. If Bowles doesn't retire, then that kind of says that he might get pushed out. So again, that's all speculation. I'm just going by what Lombardi said, that he's retiring no matter what, and the Glazers are looking to hire Belichick. So you know can't
Yeah,
do that now.
maybe he should have been a little bit more patient and waited. But too, I do agree with you that this was a leverage type deal for him all along. But you know what? Maybe UNC made such a sweetheart deal that he decided to take it. But yeah, it was a surprise to me that he went the college route instead of going back to the pros, because there's probably going to be about 9 openings, I think, this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, we'll have plenty of time over the next weeks to kind of absorb the Belichick news. And listen, I mean, he's been doing the television circuit. He's dating an extremely young girl. Maybe he's got a little juice. Maybe he's got you know just maybe a little more
Second
laid
life.
yeah, a little laid back with certain things, and he figures, all right, you know what, we'll go to college route and I'll relax. I mean, but listen, you're talking about walking in players' homes, right, and trying to recruit. I mean, imagine now the allure. And by the way, this all of a sudden, the whole Dion thing, everyone was encapsulated, and here we go engrossed in this, and now you got Belichick. I mean, imagine Belichick walking into your household.
Yeah, and that happens a little bit, but too, it's now. I know from my son when he was getting recruited, a lot of social media and coaches, you know, texting players and getting in contact that way, whether it's Snapchat or Twitter. I can't imagine Belichick learning to do those things. Maybe he'll
Yeah.
get a recruiting coordinator with them first thing.
Uh, I don't want to spend too much time on week 14. A couple things stood up, but let's kind of keep it in our backyard for a moment.
Yep.
Yeah, Brandon Graham going on Philadelphia radio during his own show the other day. And, now everyone's thinking, okay, the Eagles season is about to implode because you want a player to be honest. And pretty much Brandon Graham talked at length about the relationship between quarterback Jalen Hurts, star wide receiver in AJ Brown, and basically insinuated that the relationship is soured. You look at the production, they are a running first team. AJ Brown always wants his touches. Um, here's this is where I'm a little conflicted with this, right? So again, you got a team that's 11-2. They've won 9 straight, right? They had the wins over Washington, the Rams, Baltimore. Okay, they're a flawed offense. They struggled, obviously, against Carolina. You and I both thought Carolina was going to cover the number. You and I thought Carolina was going to keep it a little close. Um, oh, by the way, Carolina was a team that gave Kansas City all they can handle. But again, you got a quarterback that pretty much goes about his business. And what I'm hearing from the fan base is that, hey, man, if you had a pick, keep AJ Brown, get rid of the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Now, I'm not about to go that far, right? Because 2 months ago, Jalen Hurts turned it over. 2 months later, you resolve that problem, but now he's got a passing problem. I don't I don't, look, Brandon Graham, veteran, an all-time great Eagle. We know that. Super Bowl winner. That play will live in, obviously the Eagles' lore and faithful, stripping Brady, and here we go, and winning their first Super Bowl, their Lombardi trophy. He said what he said, and then he walked it back a little bit. Maybe you shouldn't kind of peel back the curtain and air the dirty laundry. But there's two schools of thought. Do those comments, do they hold water? Do they merit? Obviously, he's in that locker room. And is it cause for concern that the season might just be derailed right now? Or is this a situation where, you know what? I don't care what the hell the line is on Sunday. The Eagles are going to woodshed the Steelers, and AJ Brown's going to have 12 for a buck 36 and 2 touchdowns. And this can galvanize the team, who, oh, by the way, has won 9 straight, and they're 11-2. They're not a 3-9 team. So, your thoughts first on Graham's comments.
Yeah, you would have hoped that he would have kept it in house, but he put it out there, and he definitely came forward and was like, yeah, there's an issue here, and you clearly hear it at the end of last week's win. The Eagles players need to remember they won the game, but AJ Brown just was not happy, and he pointed the finger at the passing game, quote unquote, and you knew what he was saying, talking about his quarterback Hurts. They've not been on the same page, and the reason it's such a big deal, Q, is last season, don't forget this team was 10-1. Then down at the stretch, they lose 6 to 7 games. They lose badly in Tampa. And a lot of it, people I've talked to, guys that cover the team. I just had somebody on my show this week that covered the team for a long time. Definitely said, you know what, where there's smoke, there's fire. And in this relationship, it is definitely strained. And it's something that can implode the Eagles season. So it's going to be interesting. Sunday, they are facing a tough Steelers team that can get after people. But Hurts has got to step up and prove his prick wrong, particularly that part of the fan base that you're talking about that thinks, you know what, he's not a frontline passer. But the statistics show during this 9 game winning streak, Q, they're only throwing for about 180 yards per game. Last week, not a lot of depletion. And then you have AJ Brown. Obviously, he's one of these diva type receivers, and every team seems to have the guy, and they want the ball, etc. But when you're winning a game and they're winning with a game plan built around their offensive line is Saquon, why not stick to it? But it's going to be a problem in their locker room.
He's been sacked 7 times the last three, and he's turned the ball over 4 times, and he has 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games. They are a run first team, and I'm speaking of Jalen Hurts. And then if I look at AJ Brown's production, which I'll pull up over the last several weeks, and remember too, AJ Brown's been a little banged up. He's still going to go well over 1,000 yards. AJ Brown. So I mean, think about this, right? Let's go to 6'7", a buck 09 in a win against the Rams. Five receptions, six targets, 66 yards in a win against Baltimore. And then obviously they didn't go to him at all really the other day, 4 for 43. Now you think, okay, am I going to have to start to force feed the football? Like the one thing is, I feel is Jalen Hurts holds on to the football way too much. Like sometimes he's got to just throw it away and live to fight another day. And I'm wondering when you see the all 22, the Baldy's breakdowns, when you're looking at the film, you're seeing guys that are wide open. Why is he what? The inability to get the ball to these wide open receivers, i.e., AJ Brown. Like, is it just he's not reading going through his progressions? Is it just the unwillingness? Is he too uber focused? I mean, remember all those years Wentz was so focused on just firing off at the tight end, right? Getting the ball to Ertz, getting the ball to Ertz. Whenever, that's my safety valve. Or the Sellecks of the world with the McNabbs, right? And I'm just wondering why the inability of Jalen Hurts to get the ball to Brown, because it seems as though he's open the majority of the time.
Right. And the interesting thing is, Q, that when AJ Brown plays, the Eagles win, particularly Hurts.
Yeah.
He's 30-8 with AJ Brown in the lineup, only 12-30-1 without him. So, it just kind of shows the disparity. But the thing is, in terms of looking at the film and what's happening, not happening, I see it as Hurts is just he's one of those guys he has to see his receiver open. He's not going to throw his receiver open. He likes those long throws where he can kind of get the ball out of his hands, but he's not passing into those tight windows that a lot of these
Mm.
analysts are
Afraid
talking
to
about,
thread it. Yep.
Yeah, and I just don't know if he's that type of quarterback. That's always been my thing with him in terms of a great leader, good rusher of the football, obviously, and a winner. But if this team is behind, you wonder, is he going to be able to throw this team back? And it's coming because the Eagles get off these slow starts all the
They do.
time. We talk about they're not scoring in the first quarter. And then as you move into the playoffs, he's going to have to be that guy under center that's able to make those tough throws. And I'm just not sure of it. So, it's definitely there. And it's frustrating Brown in particular. He's supposed to be his main guy. And there was a couple times I looked at tape where he's running free and he's waving his arms and Hurts is going to the check down. So it's going to be fun to watch this week.
Well, I mean, it's just interesting, right? I mean, you got Graham coming out and saying, quote, the person that's complaining needs to be accountable. I know that Hurts is trying. Brown could be a little better with how he responds to things. We have to make sure that we don't let the personal get in the way of business. This is a team that's ripped off nine straight. They're 11-2. They already clinched a playoff spot. Now they're fighting for home field advantage. And it's like, guys, you know, team, right? Team first and foremost. It's just they have found their identity, and that's giving the ball to number 26. And players, you got to, you want to win or do you want the stats, right? I mean, it's not like a situation like Malik Neighbors again saying, yeah, I want 1,000 yards. Like, again, shut up, catch the football. You guys are losing left and right. You found another interesting way to lose against the Saints. The Giants are going to get woodshed by Baltimore. That line's going from 14 to 16. They're going to go back to Tommy DeVito, which again, we don't need to spend too much time on that. But Steelers got a big win. Buccaneers got a big win, another shaky performance by Baker Mayfield. One of the games that I liked, well, two of the games you and I were texting back and forth, Arizona spit the bit against Seattle. And then how about the Rams? Josh Allen did everything in his power to win that game. And you have to give credit to the Rams, but can we start with Bill's head coach Sean McDermott for a moment because you're running a draw, a quarterback sneak late in the game, and you got to burn a timeout. Where if you conserve that timeout and throw it in the end zone, you might have 25, 30 seconds left late in the game to try to kick a game winning field goal.
Yeah, and the thing is with the Bills, that McDermott, he's a defensive guy, and his defense had a lot of problems this game, particularly covering Puka Nacua and Cup. They had a field day, and they weren't getting enough pressure on Josh Allen as well. And he did make his plays as well, but yeah, you would wish they had better clock management and had a better opportunity to get back in this game. And the thing was, they've been scoring a lot quickly, so maybe they need to lean on their running game a lot better. You really didn't see Cook in this game, and Josh Allen put the Superman cape on. Yes, we know he had 3 touchdowns, passing and rushing, first guy in the NFL to do that, but you don't want the quarterback to have to do so much in the game. So Good game to watch as a viewer, but tough loss for the Bills. And you start wondering, are they going to be able to catch the Chiefs who got lucky? And then the Rams, they're right below the Washington in the playoff race. So they're going to be a fun team to watch down the stretch.
Another edition of BYP Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football and Sports Radio 1029 FM. The Game, part of the Coastal Sports Network. Does a great job every Monday, 8 to 9. Check them out live. Give them a follow on the X platform at Lloyd Vance. We're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Check out the show link below. BYP20, that'll get you 20% off your first purchase with the holidays right around the corner. And it's starting to get very cold out there. Have a nice little fresh cup of Joe and keep warm, if you will. And as always, we have our fresh roasted coffee on the air. All right, so a little more of the action over the weekend in the NFL. The 49ers, right? We mentioned that the Bears, we didn't think they were going to win another game. They ransacked the Bears. You almost start to feel bad for Caleb Williams. The Chargers, I had them outright. Let me ask you a question. My buddy brought this to my attention. As much as we want to sit here and say Kansas City is a lucky team. If you go through every week, my friend brought this to my attention. He texted me, he goes, look, that's not luck. It shows you how great they are because anytime they get the ball late, they're going to win the football game. That's not a product of luck. That's just a product of who they are and how they're coached. And again, they do it again against the Chargers, where Chargers learned a valuable lesson. Field goals don't beat Kansas City, touchdowns do.
It's another one, Q, where, you know, Kansas City has that championship DNA and they won 15 straight one-score games. And you know, you basically got to take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. You don't want to give it
Yep.
back to him having that last drive in his pocket, and they're struggling in terms of finding their way on offensively. They got Pacheco back, but he's still feeling his way. And D Hop, I think, is starting to get comfortable with Patrick Mahomes, and Kelsey's getting older. So, but they still find a way to defensively get after the other team, and Spagnola's doing a great job in terms of keeping these scores low enough, like under 20 points, that that Mahomes and the rest of the group's going to find a way to win. And you saw him salt that game away at the end by just working the clock. It was interesting though that my buddy says to me, I bet my mortgage that he's going to make this kick. And as soon as he said that, it hits the upright, and I'm thinking, oh, it's not, but it goes through,
Yeah,
but the good teams find a way to win. And
correct.
it's interesting. I've been crunching all the statistics on the Chiefs. They just seem to be chasing that Patriots group from Belichick's teams from like '06 to '11, around there, where they just always found a way to win and all those consecutive division titles. And, you got to tip your cap to Andy Reid and his staff, and particularly Patrick Mahomes.
One of the games I thought was compelling for a couple of reasons. Kirk Cousins going back to Minnesota. The Vikings just ran away with it late. I mean, you're talking that was a 14 to 10 game. Vikings up by 4 at the half. They put up 42. Cousins struggles continue. They're going to stick with him. Little surprise. I thought maybe by this time they would go to Michael Penix, but Sam Darnold, now the thought is, okay, has Sam Darnold played himself into that 3 year, $130 million kind of quarterback uh, stratosphere right now because of his play on the field? I mean, his numbers are staggering. 29 touchdowns, I think, only 10 picks. The offensive line needs to do a little better job keeping him upright, but he's thrown for over 3,300 yards. He'll throw for well over 35 touchdowns and maybe 4,000 yards when it's all said and done. So he's had a resurgent season. They made the move. They signed Daniel Jones, right, as a backup. You got the rookie J.J. McCarthy, who was lost to the season, yet he's going to come back, hopefully fully healthy for next season. I mean, if you're Minnesota, this is not a bad problem to have. I'll tell you, as a Giant fan, I would take Slinging Sammy Darnold for a couple seasons, to be quite honest with you, because I liked him even when he was a young player with New York, even though he saw the ghost and made mistakes. I thought the talent was there and you saw flashes of it. Now he's being coached up. He's taking advantage of his situation. He's thriving right now with a team in Minnesota that's 11 and 2, even though they're second in the NFC North. They're pretty much going to be a playoff team as well. So if you are the Minnesota Vikings right now, and is this a good or bad dilemma to have with Sam Darnold?
Oh, it's a great dilemma to have. They found a quarterback that he's basically done the Kurt Warner. He's given a rebirth to his career. You think of Warner when he went to the Cardinals and rebuilt this thing. Darnold was on scrap heap, and everybody was like, okay, they signed him, and he'll be a nice backup. But he's done a great job with Minnesota Vikings. Two teams going in two different directions. When you talk about the Vikings and the Falcons, Falcons are fourth straight loss, and this was the chance for them to kind of get into the race of NFC South. They've already beaten the Bucks twice, but I really was impressed with the Vikings, particularly Darnold, as you said, 5 TDs, no interceptions, not making the mistakes that he did in the past, and he's on a 1 year deal, so he's already
Unbelievable.
proved it, and they're gonna keep him around. Guys I've talked to said they're gonna find a way to keep him, whether it's franchise him or offer him a value deal. Now the thing is, Q, I just don't know if he's worth that 50 million plus. They're not paying McCarthy, but McCarthy is on that rookie deal. But it's a good dilemma for O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo Mensa to have because Darnold's playing lights out, and this team is firmly in the playoff race. They're 11-2.
Um, but again, I might look at it the flip side to that. So he's playing extremely well. He's rejuvenated 100%. But I think, listen, he's earned himself a legitimate quarterback contract, right? Definitely, definitely, definitely. Um, but I also kind of look at it as, okay, well, what kind of money he's going to want, right? You came to Minnesota, you played on your 1 year, $10 million contract. Now you want that big deal. So are the Vikings going to invest in that type of money? Because it doesn't seem like they can go out and spend 40 million on a quarterback, right? I mean, that's why Kirk Cousins is in Atlanta right now and not the starting quarterback of the Vikings. So that's kind of part of the game. It's a shitty aspect of the game because you got to make those business decisions based on the salary cap. And the other thing is you're paying a receiver what? 35
Nice
million?
favorite receiver in the game. Yes, there's only so much can go around, and they kind of skimped on defense. They let Danielle Hunter go to the Texans this season and move some other guys around, and it's going to be tough if they want to pay Darnold that 50 million plus, you know, regular quarterback salary. I can't believe I'm saying that now, but that's the type of money that you're talking about. And if he gets the open market, you know the Titans, the Giants, that maybe the Jets, all these teams that the quarterback class is not that great in
No.
2025. Yeah, there's Shador Sanders and a couple guys. But if you can get Darnold, who seems to rejuvenate his career, I know these other GMs are going to jump on him. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But everybody up there in Minnesota is like, all right, we're going to take it 1 week at a time and it'll work itself out.
Well, it almost reminds me of the Giants situation, right? Because it's tough. You're paying the best receiver in football, it deserves every dime, and then you turn around and you pay a quarterback 40 plus million, right? I mean, they gave Jefferson that, what was that, a $35 million extension over the next 5 plus years, or whatever the numbers are. I'm sure you got them off the top of your head, but be that as it may, he is the highest paid wide receiver in the game. And I mean, I like Sam Darnold. I'm rooting for Sam Darnold. But I just think the numbers don't jive. Plus, you got Daniel Jones. Plus, you got McCarthy, who you drafted top 10 pick, right?
Yeah,
JJ McCarthy.
he was probably going to be the starter coming out of
Correct.
training camp, and then he tore his knee up in that preseason game, unfortunately. So, um, a lot of decisions to make, and then already it's like, okay, is there going to be a quarterback controversy? And you and I have covered enough of those. I
Yeah.
remember Don McNabb looking over his shoulder at Kevin Cobb, and it just doesn't. Then you start getting factions in the locker room,
Yeah.
and
And Sam
but they're
Bradford convincingly looking over his shoulder when, Carson
yeah,
Wentz.
yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how they play that. But the Vikings, like I was saying, great story with them. They got Chicago this week on Monday night, and they're stacking W's. And it Detroit stumbles, they have a pretty tough schedule. Minnesota might be the number one seed going into the NFC playoffs.
If Cincinnati was a 11-2 team, we'd be saying Joe Burrow's the MVP right now, will we not?
Yes, his stats are incredible, and the way he and Chase are putting up these big time numbers, you have to think, yeah, I think he'd be right in the mix. But winning is a big portion of that MVP equation, and Josh Allen, the way that he's playing right now, even golf, Saquon Barkley, you'd have to say they're ahead of him.
I said this in fantasy world. If I was the Giants, I'd give up a top five draft pick for Joe Burrow right now or Josh Allen. That's how high I think of those quarterbacks.
Definitely. These guys, they're passers of football, and that's what the NFL is all about now. You want a
Yeah.
guy that's going to be able to fling it about 35 times a game, protect the football, but also make those big plays down the field, and that's what Burrow gives you. Now, Brown, he's been kind of stingy with the money over the years, and it's going to be interesting to see how he works out with Chase and pays him, not pays him. But yeah, I expect that Burrow and Chase will be there for a long time since he.
Burrow's down with a knee wrist, listed as a limited participant Wednesday's walkthrough practice. Um, I feel as though they're wasting the careers of Burrow and Chase, but I say that we know the defense has some issues. They have a great offense. I'm wondering, do they chalk it up to just a down year? Meaning, if they finish the season with only five or six, seven wins, do you think they fire Zach Taylor?
No, I was just saying Mike Brown earlier. They'll stay the course. He doesn't want to take coaches that are not actually on the sidelines. And he gave Taylor that extension. Taylor's done a great job with them. And you saw how many years Marvin Lewis hung around. I think it was like 20 years with the
Hmm.
Bengals. So they're pretty loyal to their coaches. And I think Taylor will come back and like you're saying, they'll chalk it up to injury. They had some injuries, particularly on their offensive line, and their defense has some defections, and they'll try to reload. But you know, Cincinnati is a dangerous team down the stretch. They are definitely a spoiler because they can put up a lot of points.
Last one before we get to game balls and Lackey with the Giants losing to the Saints in hilarious fashion again. I mean, you just kind of knew it was going to happen. You get the plane going over Giant Stadium, shades of what transpired in the 70s. I know everyone's been getting on me saying there's no way they get rid of Joe Shane. There's no way they fire Brian Daboll. I'm not seeing it, man. I really don't. You're winless at home. You're winless in the division. You're going to get smoked by the Ravens. You might have an opportunity to keep it close against Atlanta. I don't know. Uh, I did not want them to win because there's no point in winning three or four games. Try to get the number one overall draft pick. I'm not as sold to these quarterbacks, just like you aren't. But when you got to deal with that, people leaving 11 points, you're averaging 14. Statistically, it's one of their worst seasons in history. And you're talking about 100 seasons of the New York Football Giants, right? My New York Football Giants, and they can't get out of their own way. I mean, I thought a couple years ago 3-13 was bad. I remember the Cannell, the Brown, even the early 80s when they were fluctuating, Sims was hurt and Bruner. They made the playoffs in 81, last game of the season in overtime against Dallas. They started to ascend 84, 85, 86. But my father used to tell me in the 70s they were a bad friggin' football team, man. A really bad football team. Everything that's going on right now, and then you get the players, they're coming out, they're barking, they're saying what they're saying, they're me, me, me. Um, Man, I'll tell you, I don't know how Joe Shane and Brian Daboll survived this. I just don't.
Yeah, and the Giants have always had a history of stay the course. We'll right the ship, but the ugliness every week is just getting worse, Q. And you're talking about they're competing for the number one overall pick, and when that happens, somebody's got to go. Something has to change and rebuild around the draft pick and Dayball he was known to be a pretty good coach. A lot of people point, maybe his choices at offensive coordinator just weren't the best, and um, but we'll see. I think one of them is not going to survive this, and it may be both of them. So and a lot of people were pointing at King because I was looking at his past drafts have not been the best. He's missed on a lot of players in
Yeah.
terms of his draft pick. So Mara has some serious thinking to do in terms of leadership of his team.
Yeah, I don't know how much Joe Shane gets a pass this year. Tracy, Johnson, and Neighbors. Okay, that's not a bad draft class. By the way, 3 years, I think 30 million I'm seeing for the hoodie at Carolina. All right, game balls and Lackey. Hmm. Game ball, you got to give it to Josh Allen, even though they lost.
I did not. It was another guy who had a great performance. I gave it to Seattle running back Dax Charbonnet. He comes off the bench, 22 rushes for 134, two TDs, including a long 51 yard that broke that game open against the Cardinals, and he also had 59 yards in reception. So explosive player. There were a lot of choices. Allen, Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase just the other night. He was incredible as well. So, but I definitely gave it to Charbonnet.
Ooh, Lackey. I know you don't typically give the Lackey to a team that wins. I mean, you can give it to the Giants every week. You can give it to Atlanta, Kirk Cousins. Who had a bad look? You gonna give it to Winston? Poor Winston, Jameis
See,
Winston.
now you could always throw him in the mix because he's so inconsistent. But do you know what I gave to this guy was very inconsistent and cost the team? Carolina rookie receiver Xavier
That's
Legette.
tough,
I
man.
mean,
Yeah, he should have had that
dude,
catch
he should have had that ball. I mean, it was in his hands. I
straight up.
mean, and that would have gave changed the complexion of that game.
Yeah.
We would have got to see could Jalen Hurts lead his team back, but he had three drops officially on that last drive, and then we talked about the one in the end zone, and he was only 2 of 8 in terms of his targets for this game. So
Hmm.
I know the young man is working on his consistency, but definitely Leggett is my lackey for this week.
All right, not bad. We'll preview week 15 already later on the week and see if Lloyd can jump on the drive with Q later on the week as well. Don't forget, check him out every Monday, 8 to 9 on SR 1029 FM The Game. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Give him a follow on X at Lloyd Vance. He's always kind enough to join us on this edition of BYP, powered by Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase, BYP 20. Played Against Sports and Zen Auto Concepts, the #1 detailing shop in all of Florida. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for the time.
All right, Q, thanks for having me on.